Frederick Law Olmsted, born in 1822 and he died in 1903. So, father of American landscape architecture. And he was. So let's read a little bit about him. So he was born like the other two architects, I.M. and Peter Zumthor, on April 26, but in 1822, was an American landscape architect, journalist, social critic, and public administrator. He was the father of American landscape architecture. Olmsted was famous for co-designing many well-known urban parks with his senior partner, Calvert Vaux, a Frenchman. One of Olmsted's early works included designing the Walnut Hill Park in New Britain, Connecticut. His later efforts included Central Park and Prospect Park in New York City and Cadwallader Park in Trenton. He headed the preeminent landscape architecture and planning consultancy of late 19th century America, which was carried on and expanded by his sons Frederick Jr. and John C. under the name Olmsted Brothers. Daniel Burnham, a force in architecture in Chicago, said of him, he paints with lakes and wooded slopes, with lawns and banks and forest-covered hills, with mountain sides and ocean views. A nice description. So here was the man, and I think his expression also shows depth and sensitivity and seriousness. Now, of course, it's easy to idealize the past, but you know, these photographs do say something. Olmsted, Frederick Law Olmsted, some drawings by him. So he designed great parks, and I know two of them very well because I had spent a lot of time, maybe too much time in them. The Central Park in Manhattan and Prospect Park in Brooklyn, New York. He had a very, he was the right man for the right job. What else can we say? You know, I mean, look at these parts and compare them with the simplicity and even vulgarity of the asphalted passageways or paths that you know, Peter Zumthor designed also in a park. You can't. This was a sensitive man who worked with plans. He was a landscape architect, although I think he never studied landscape architecture except by himself. But you can tell from the drawing of the circulation that he was sensitive. There is a, you know, you can tell immediately that this was a man who indeed painted with a natural, you know, I cannot call them materials, or I could. You understand, as Daniel Burnham said, with mountains and lakes and rivers and grass and so on. A great architect. Look here, Prospect Park in Brooklyn. Look at the design of this man would not have done what Peter Zumthor did. No, now it's true, he didn't live at the end of the 20th century, the beginning of the 21st. I think without idealizing the past, I think we are more cynical. We don't even notice the lack of sensitivity any longer. But it's enough to contemplate the plan, you know, the plan of this park that he designed, to feel that this was a man who was a philosopher of maybe a reader of Emerson, you know, a man who understood nature. Something I am sorry I cannot truly say about Peter Zumthor. It's true, Peter Zumthor is not a landscape architect. But I don't know what is here. He didn't design, he made also some designs for Washington, where of course symmetries and the ceremonial of governmental procedures had to be respected, but the buildings were not done by him. We begin now with Central Park in New York City, a truly great park. and Manhattan is lucky to have it. In 1857, a rising young architect from London, he was from London, but from French, roots, Calvert Vaux, asked Olmsted to join him in preparing an entry for the Central Park competition. I think, if I remember well, Olmsted worked for the administration of parks. He didn't have training in architecture or landscape architecture, but he was involved, very involved. You see, it says here, at that time, Olmsted was serving as the first superintendent of Central Park, a position that Vaux assumed would give Olmsted unique knowledge of the topography. Olmsted had never submitted a design for a public park before, but their submission, known as the Greensward Plan, was exceptional in its creativity and beauty, says this person, Petri. Like so many of us do, Olmsted and Vaux worked up to the very last second to submit the design. The Frederick Law Olmsted papers note that when they arrived to submit their plan for the competition, the offices were closed and they had to rouse the janitor and leave their submission with him. We know this. We know how hard it is to work for a competition. And indeed, always time is a problem. And if you finalize the work, it's in the last second. As it turns out, their presentation was inspired. It included before and after views that allowed the commissioners to envision what the park would look like after Olmsted and Vaux had completed their work. There were to be passages of open space as well as more rugged terrain, says this person, anticipating that New York City would one day be a large metropolis. Both Vaux and Olmsted planned to have heavy planting around the edges of the park to exclude the sights and sounds of the future city and to provide visitors a restorative and peaceful place. Again, if we compare this to the pavilion done by Peter Zumthor in London, he didn't have this problem because outside of his pavilion was nature. In this case, well, a very different case, of course, but in this case, you'd understand why Vaux and Olmsted planted, big trees at the edges, because you had, highways and big avenues and boulevards around it. It's a magical park, and it's truly a great richness for New York City. Here is the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and anyway, Columbia University with its School of Architecture, and not only, of course, is somewhere here. This is the Central Park West. John Lennon was killed in front of his house. He lived somewhere here in a very famous residence, a building at 72nd Street or something, if I remember well. Anyway, this is, these are, the rich live here on the east, richer than the west, but even on the west, there are, the proletarians do not live here. Okay, so moving forward. These are pictures of the, it's a very rich and visceral park. And I think very, very gracefully are done the circulations. There is circulation for the automobiles as well. But you see, it's curved. It's not simplistically curved. They are almost like the veins within one's body. They are organic. Central Park, Olmsted and Vaux, but Olmsted was the actual landscape designer. And what can I say? The magic of nature is the magic of nature, and if you understand it and feel for it, it shows. If you don't, well, you don't, I guess. Central Park. Central Park. This is a picture, a recent picture. You see those two girls have masks. So it's after 2020, after the pandemic started. His landscape design is very sensitive and romantic in a way, you know, and I appreciate it very much. Now, Prospect Park in Brooklyn, also designed by him, designed by Olmsted and Calvert Vaux in the mid-19th century. This green space first opened to the public in 1867, when it was only partially built and was later designated a scenic landmark by the City Landmarks Preservation Commission in 1975. Today, Prospect Park, nicknamed Brooklyn's backyard, welcomes more than 10 million visitors each year to enjoy concerts at its band shell, a zoo, children's playground equipment, pedal boats on the picturesque lake, and miles of roads for joggers, walkers, and cyclists. It's a great example of the landscape architect's pastoral style. This was the word I was trying to find. Yes, his landscape design is described with this word pastoral, which can be seen in the marvelous 75-acre long meadow. It is open green space, says Petrie, with small bodies of water and scattered trees and groves designed to be soothing to the eye and to be restorative in spirit. Here is the plan. We already took a look at this. I love this plan. I mean, even as a graphic work, I think it's beautiful. Yes, glory to Olmsted. I have been here. I laid on that grass. It's nice, and indeed, many people enjoy it very much, as you can see. But parks in general are nice, you know, and why? Because there is nature. And of course, in this picture, we contemplate a spring day, and spring is always beautiful, as it is now outside as well. Prospect Park. There are also all kinds of bridges, and it's a complex, network of alleys and roads and so on. Now another park in Boston, Boston Emerald Necklace, this winding network of green spaces stretching across the city of Boston consists of the Arnold Arboretum, Franklin Park, and Back Bay fence. The verdant expanses, which refer to as one of the necklace jewels, feels like its own distinctive and natural landscape, and that's on purpose. Olmsted's vision of city parks being sanctuaries from the clamor and grit of urban life is played out. So again, this is important to underline. Olmsted understood city parks as sanctuaries away from the clamor and grit of urban life. It's played out as you travel through the 7-mile-long series of meadows, marshlands, and roadways. When Olmsted successfully applied this design theory to New York City's Central Park, Boston took note and eventually hired him in the 1870s to build not just one large park, but an entire park system where Bostonians could easily go when the day's work is done, and where they may stroll for an hour, seeing, hearing, and feeling nothing of the bustle and jar of the streets. By 1895, after about 20 years of work, Olmsted was finished. He went on to settle in Brookline in 1883, opening offices for the country's first landscape architecture firm in his home, and continuing to work on the city's chain of parks. He had a very, very, very rich activity. He designed many parks. So, nature, parks, people sitting down, talking, colors, the green, the smell of nature. It's beautiful. Nature is always beautiful. And I particularly think now we need more gardens and more parks and more green than buildings. Sorry to say this to architects, But I think this is the truth. We need more oxygen than that brutal asphalt of Mr. Peter Zumthor. And there was just a small, sample of brutality. Of course, there are much larger ones. What can we say? What would we do without nature? But Biltmore Estate in North Carolina, Asheville. I don't know if I did well incorporating this text. You are probably a little tired, and I am too. The 3-mile approach road stretching from Biltmore Village to Biltmore House in Asheville is no accident. It's the result of a very intentional and complex design by Olmsted that showcases a perfect blend of forest and landscape with no hard edges. No hard edges, Mr. Peter Zumthor, to separate the two, and an intentional lack of long-range views, explains this person. Anyway, let's move forward. He used native plant materials as the basis for his plan, adding 10,000 rhododendrons as a background element for the route. He also used mountain laurels, native and Japanese andromeda, and other plants. Evergreens in the foreground add richness, delicacy, and mystery. Delicacy, Mr. Peter Zumthor. You have them in the watercolors. You have it in the watercolors and the pencil drawing sometimes, but not in the buildings. While varieties of river, cane, and bamboo offer a hint of the exotic and tropical. He placed low-growing plants along the brook and edge of the drive. For variety of color in the winter, he used hardy olives, evergreens with an olive tint, junipers, red cedars, and yews, all to create the complexity of light and shadow that define a picturesque style. Well, the light and shadow we know about too from Le Corbusier, but not about nature. Anyway, it's a big palace here. I was surprised. I knew nothing about it. It's an incredible residence. America has such buildings, look at it, You would say, well, it's not Versailles, of course, but nor was it built for a king or an emperor, but the very rich built things inspired from France often, and even from the Middle Ages in significant ways. So this doesn't quite look like the Brave New World, does it? Anyway, look, I mean, here this is kind of a French garden, the kind of, French landscape is full of, and yes, it's a nice landscape, but different from what we see in Central Park and Prospect Park. And the building, what can we say? One can only desire to live there. Now, Mount Royal in Montreal, we are approaching the end. In Canada, begun in 1874. I think this is a work which was not finalized. Something happened to it. It was the first park Olmsted designed after he and Vaux dissolved their partnership. So they split. In an effort to emphasize the area's mountainous topography, Olmsted decided to make the mountain more mountainous through the use of exaggerated vegetation, such as shade trees at the bottom of the carriage path that climbs the mountain so it would resemble a valley. The vegetation would get sparser as the visitor went higher and higher, completing the illusion of exaggerated height. Olmsted wanted to install a grand mountain pasture and lake, but the city decided on a reservoir instead. So Olmsted planned a grand promenade around it. Unfortunately, the city of Montreal suffered a depression in the mid-80s, 1870s, and many of Olmsted's plans were abandoned. The carriageway was built, but it was done hastily and without regard to the original plan. Anyway, let's move forward to see some pictures. Okay. Nothing really new, but the park seems to be a little bit less accomplished than Prospect Park and Central Park. So this is in Montreal, in Canada. still Frederick Law Olmsted. Now, the grounds of the United States Capitol and the White House, a different kind of landscaping. For nearly 20 years, Olmsted oversaw the development of the Capitol grounds. In 1874, Congress commissioned Olmsted to plan and oversee landscape improvements. It was Olmsted who gave the Capitol grounds dignified formality to heighten the Capitol's architectural beauty. Olmsted's original design called for a ground plan that would unite the White House, the Capitol, and other government agencies to symbolize the union of the nation. He scaled back his ground plans, however, being permitted to develop only 50 acres, then comprising the Capitol grounds. Unable to create a park amid the Capitol surroundings due to the 21 streets touching the grounds, he instead designed a picturesque scene that emphasized the Capitol's beauty in places where the entire building could be seen. Olmsted was paid only $1,500 for his original design of the grounds. I don't know why this is mentioned. He also was allotted money for travel expenses, salaries for his hired hands, and a sizable $200,000 budget for improvements for the Capitol grounds. During his 18 years as a landscape architect of the Capitol, Olmsted worked to create a scene where the architectural triumph of the Capitol, I wouldn't really call it so, would be emphasized, while the natural beauty of the grounds would offer comfort and solace to visitors and city goers. They would not supersede the Capitol's views and sightlines. Anyway, I don't think architectural is a triumph, but anyway, for more conventional minds, probably it is. He worked with the trees and the plants and the grass and the lawn and so on. Anyway, a difficult job, no? Because how do you marry nature with the central power of such a giant bureaucracy and yes, power. Washington Park, Chicago. I like this because I don't know if I have here pictures in colors. Yes, I do like the pastoral, maybe I'm sentimental, but I like the pastoral style of Frederick Law Olmsted, because how else could you be with plants, which are so fragile and delicate, with flowers, with trees, with bushes. And yes, you feel closer to nature if the style, as it is called, is pastoral. Not that there is no beauty in André Le Notre. There is, of course, without doubt. I love André Le Notre, but that's a very different kind of approach to gardening and nature. But this one I like as well, and I think any sensitive person would feel pleased to walk here. You see, just a second. If I compare the brutality, because I cannot use another word, of that path done in concrete in a park, again inside the park by Peter Zumthor, with what Olmsted did here, we see two different kind of people. This was a sensitive man, truly, I am almost angry when I think about the lack of sensitivity of an architect who should have known better, that concrete surface, so simplistically also designed or drawn. Here we see consideration for nature, and here is not concrete. This is another thing. You don't pour concrete and asphalt so insensitively in a park. You just don't do it, Mr. Zumthor. Anyway, I don't understand the world I live in. I really, sometimes I don't understand. Imagine having here Peter Zumthor, just pouring asphalt and concrete here and killing the generosity of nature and destroying actually the beauty of the park. This is beautiful. I'm sorry, no one can convince me otherwise. It is beautiful because this man understood nature. The World's Columbian Exhibition from 1893 in Chicago Daniel Burnham, I think, was in charge of this, huge world exhibition. There were some, buildings here. I think even Sullivan contributed. We did the landscaping. Unfortunately, all of this is gone because this is what human beings consider to squatter, their efforts. They squander them to just imagine how much they invested, and the most world exhibitions end up in, being removed, being destroyed, being whatever. The World's Fair in Chicago, 1893. Again, he did the landscaping. Now, maybe some of these buildings, didn't deserve too much to be kept. I don't know. I shouldn't be harsh. Hello, Mr. Olmsted. Happy birthday to you. That's it. And happy birthday to all three of them. Thank you for being here today.